The Galactic Assembly Hall buzzed with tension, 1,000 species represented in the towering chamber. Aliens of every imaginable form, scaled, feathered, gelatinous and more, congregated in cautious silence. Each delegation's translator devices hummed quietly, interpreting the hundreds of languages into comprehensible words. All eyes, eye spots, and sensory appendages were focused on the center of the room, where the test orb floated ominously. The orb, a smooth black sphere no larger than a human's fist, radiated an energy that set nerves on edge. It had appeared a month earlier in the galactic hub, seemingly out of nowhere. It projected a single message in the universal galactic standard. The test begins now. Only one species shall ascend. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Species far and wide scrambled to understand what the test was. Was it a competition of intelligence? Strength? Empathy? No further details had been offered, and the orb remained silent, inscrutable, and indifferent. The assembly had convened to prepare, but fear and confusion reigned supreme. The humans, as usual, had arrived late. The delegation from Earth strode into the hall with casual confidence, their gait relaxed despite the palpable anxiety of the other species. The human representatives were a mix of military officers, scientists, and diplomats. Leading them was Colonel Adrian Steele, a seasoned Marine with a reputation for thriving in chaos. Her presence was magnetic, her sharp eyes scanning the room with amusement. As the humans took their seats, an avian-like alien with shimmering blue feathers leaned toward them. This was Ambassador Kreschel of the Thrix, a species known for their tactical brilliance. Humans, Kreschel began in a clipped tone, you seem oddly unbothered by the situation. Colonel Steele smirked. We've learned not to panic until there's something worth panicking about. Kreschel's feathers ruffled in irritation. This is a matter of galactic importance. The test could determine the future of every species here. Could it? Steele asked, leaning back in her chair. Or is this just another overblown cosmic riddle? Before Kreschel could respond, the orb flared to life. A wave of energy rippled through the hall, and the voices of 1,000 species fell silent. The sphere projected a series of symbols into the air, incomprehensible at first glance. Then came the voice, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and speak directly into the mind. The test begins. Each species shall face a trial. Success ensures survival. Failure brings obliteration. Proceed. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted, clicked, and screeched in disarray. But the humans? They just laughed. The first trial. The humans were summoned first, much to the curiosity of the other species. As the assembly observed through holographic projections, the humans stepped into a designated chamber, a featureless expanse of white light. Colonel Steele, along with 2 scientists and a logistics officer, stood before a towering monolith that seemed to hum with energy. The orb materialized in front of them, its smooth surface shifting to display a new set of glyphs. The voice spoke again. Trial 1, Fear. Confront the void within. The white light vanished, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. The humans stood still, their breathing steady. Slowly, the darkness seemed to press in on them, becoming suffocating. Whispers filled the void, incomprehensible but chilling. Shadows danced at the edges of perception, and a sense of dread crept into their minds. Colonel Steele tilted her head, listening to the whispers. Then she barked a laugh. This is it? A haunted house. The logistics officer, a wiry man named Cooper, chuckled nervously. Feels like a bad VR simulation. One of the scientists, Dr. Elena Chong, frowned. The orb is probing our minds. It's trying to amplify our fears. Steele crossed her arms, unimpressed. Then it's in for a hell of a time. Humans live with fear every day. We just learned how to compartmentalize it. She stepped forward, her voice steady. You want fear? Let me tell you about growing up on Earth. About hurricanes that can flatten cities. Earthquakes that split the ground beneath your feet. Animals with venom that can kill you in minutes. Diseases that wiped out millions before we even knew what germs were. The whispers faltered. Steele grinned. Fear is just another problem to solve. We don't freeze, we adapt. It's what we do. The darkness hesitated, then receded. The orb pulsed once and disappeared, leaving the humans in a flood of light. The chamber opened and Steele and her team walked out to a stunned assembly. What happened? Kreschel asked, his feathers puffed in confusion. Steele smirked. We passed. What's next? A growing divide. As other species faced their trials, the results were grim. The aquatic Galari were consumed by their own trial, their delegation vanishing without a trace. The insectoid Zorn collapsed in on themselves, unable to withstand the psychological strain. The Thrix failed as well, their tactical minds overwhelmed by an unrelenting trial of moral choice. The humans, however, approached each trial with a casual confidence that bordered on arrogance. Their adaptability, resilience, and sheer stubbornness allowed them to succeed where others failed. The second trial tested resourcefulness. The humans were placed in a simulated scenario where their ship was stranded on an alien world, with limited supplies and no communication. For a species that had survived countless apocalypses, both natural and self-inflicted, it was almost laughable. Cooper, the logistics officer, summed it up best. "We've done worse with less." The third trial tested cooperation, placing the humans in a scenario where they had to negotiate with rival groups to achieve a common goal. They excelled, using a mix of diplomacy, strategy, and the occasional bluff to unify the factions. As the humans advanced, the remaining species grew uneasy. Whispers filled the assembly, whispers of distrust, jealousy, and fear. "Do you think they've cheated?" one delegate asked another. "They're too unpredictable," another replied. "They thrive in chaos. It's unnatural." Kreschel watched the humans with a mixture of admiration and dread. They weren't just surviving the test, they were thriving in it. But why? He approached Colonel Steele in private, his feathers quivering. "How do you do it?" Steele raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Pass these trials so effortlessly. What makes your species different?" Steele's expression turned serious. "We're not different. We're just used to it." "Used to what?" "Surviving," she said simply. "On Earth, the universe didn't give us a choice. It threw everything it had at us: plagues, predators, natural disasters, wars. We learned how to adapt, how to endure. The test isn't showing us anything we haven't already lived through." Kreschel stared at her, a dawning realization washing over him. The humans weren't thriving because they were superior, they were thriving because their entire existence had been a test. The final laugh. As the trials continued, the humans faced their greatest challenge yet, a trial designed to test a species' will to sacrifice. The stakes were high and the cost was steep. But as always, humanity approached the trial with grit, determination, and a surprising amount of humor. By the time the orb delivered its final verdict, one thing was clear: humanity had passed every trial with flying colors. The other species looked on, some with respect, others with fear. Colonel Steele, for her part, couldn't resist a smirk as she addressed the assembly. "You all thought we were the underdogs. That we were too young, too reckless, too chaotic to survive. But that's exactly why we're still standing. We've been laughing in the face of impossible odds for centuries. This test? It's just another Tuesday." The orb pulsed one final time, its voice resonating through the hall. "Humanity has proven its worth. The galaxy is yours to guide." The humans didn't cheer or gloat. They simply nodded, their expressions unreadable. Steele turned to Kreschel and offered a small smile. "Guess we'll be seeing more of each other," she said. Kreschel hesitated, then bowed his head. "You may be unpredictable, but perhaps that's exactly what the galaxy needs." As the humans prepared to leave, Steele looked out at the stars, a quiet resolve in her eyes. The test was over, but their true challenge was just beginning. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as survivors. And they were ready. The humans had made it through the first trial, and word of their success spread quickly through the Galactic Assembly. As other species faced their own tests, the outcomes were grim. The assembly hall became eerily quiet with each passing hour, the weight of failure pressing down on those who remained. For the Drenith, a species of silicon-based life forms renowned for their logic and efficiency, the trial of fear unraveled them completely. The whispers and shadows amplified their deepest insecurities, rendering their famed rationality useless. They dissolved into crystalline shards, unable to comprehend the abstract terror they were forced to confront. The Thrix, with their tactical genius and hyper-analytical minds, encountered a different challenge. Their trial forced them into a moral conundrum where no choice seemed correct. Their inability to compromise their rigid sense of ethics led to paralysis. The shimmering blue-feathered delegation exited the chamber in silence, their crestfallen expressions betraying their defeat. But for the humans, the trial seemed almost laughable. As they awaited their next challenge, the human delegation remained calm and collected. Colonel Steele, lounging in her chair with a cup of coffee, watched the other species nervously whisper among themselves. "It's like watching a bunch of kids cramming for a test they didn't study for," Cooper quipped, leaning against a console. "Not just any test," Dr. Chang added. "A test they don't understand and can't predict. It's no wonder they're terrified. Steele sipped her coffee, her gaze sharp. It's not about intelligence or strength. It's about resilience. These trials are breaking them because they've never been broken before. They've never had to scrape themselves up and keep going. The room's lights dimmed, signaling the next trial. The orb materialized again, its dark surface pulsing with energy. Trial 2, Survival. Build from nothing. The harsh simulation. The humans found themselves standing in a vast, desolate wasteland. The sky was a dull gray, the ground cracked and barren. In the distance, jagged mountains loomed, and the faint sound of howling winds echoed through the air. There was no visible source of food, water, or shelter. The orb floated in front of them, its voice resonating in their minds. You have 72 hours to create sustainable conditions. Failure to meet the criteria will result in termination. The landscape shimmered and holographic monitors materialized in the sky, displaying the progress of each species in real time. The other delegations watched intently from the assembly hall as each species worked to complete the trial. Time to earn our paychecks, Steele said, rolling up her sleeves. The humans immediately sprang into action. Dr. Chang began analyzing the environment, taking soil samples and scanning for resources. Cooper set up a makeshift workstation, salvaging pieces of the environment to construct rudimentary tools. Steele coordinated their efforts, her sharp instincts honed from years of battlefield experience. We'll need water first, Chang said, frowning at her scanner. The soil's too dry to support crops and there's no natural source nearby. Steele nodded. Cooper, think you can rig something up? Cooper grinned. If it's got molecules, I can make it work. Within hours, the humans had constructed a basic filtration system using condensation from the air. It wasn't much, but it was enough to sustain them. Next, they focused on building shelter, using the cracked rocks and brittle vegetation to create a sturdy, insulated structure. The other species struggled in comparison. The aquatic Trizari floundered on the arid landscape, unable to adapt to a world without water. The insectoid Kralth, used to hive-like cooperation, fell apart when separated into individual units by the trial. In the assembly hall, Kreschel watched the humans' progress with a mix of awe and unease. How are they doing this? Another delegate murmured. They're chaos incarnate, Kreschel muttered. But somehow that chaos works, adapting to the impossible. By the second day, the humans had not only stabilized their environment but also begun experimenting with long-term solutions. Dr. Chang discovered traces of dormant microbial life in the soil and engineered a way to jumpstart its growth. Cooper modified the filtration system to produce cleaner water, while Steele scouted the area for additional resources. Their progress was displayed prominently on the monitors, much to the dismay of the other delegations. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. This is just another Tuesday for us, Steele said, wiping sweat from her brow as she watched Cooper install the final piece of their solar-powered generator. Chang smirked. Survival is practically a hobby for humans. Earth was the original death world. The term Deathworlders was often used derogatorily in the galaxy, a label for species that evolved on planets considered hostile or uninhabitable by others. But for humans it was a badge of honor. They had turned adversity into an art form. As the 72-hour mark approached, the orb materialized once more, its surface shimmering with approval. Trial completed. Humans, passed. The humans exited the simulation chamber to stunned silence. Steele shot a grin at Kreschel as she passed. Still think we're unpredictable? Kreschel's feathers ruffled. More than ever. Shifting alliances. As more species failed the second trial, tensions in the assembly hall rose. Whispers of conspiracy spread, accusing the humans of cheating or having prior knowledge of the test. Steele ignored the accusations, focusing instead on preparing her team for the next challenge. Kreschel, however, couldn't let it go. He approached Steele during a recess, his demeanor cautious but curious. Colonel Steele, he began, may I ask you something? Shoot, Steele replied, leaning against a railing. How do you approach these trials with such confidence? Surely you're not invincible. Steele chuckled. Far from it. Humans screw up all the time. But here's the thing, we're used to failure. We've had to deal with it for thousands of years. Natural disasters, wars, plagues, you name it, we've faced it. And every time we found a way to get back up. Kreschel tilted his head. So your strength lies in your adaptability? Partly, Steele said. But it's also our mindset. When you've survived extinction-level events, a galactic test doesn't seem so bad. We've already proven we can handle anything the universe throws at us. Kreschel fell silent, his feathers rippling as he processed her words. Perhaps the humans weren't as reckless as they seemed. Perhaps their chaos was a form of order the rest of the galaxy simply couldn't comprehend. As the next trial loomed, the humans stood ready, their determination unshaken. For them, the test was just another challenge in a universe full of them. And they were more than prepared to face whatever came next. The orb reappeared as the humans prepared for the third trial, its surface swirling with a kaleidoscope of colors. It hovered in the center of the assembly hall, casting an eerie glow over the delegates. The room fell silent, the weight of anticipation palpable. Trial 3, Sacrifice. A choice must be made. The words echoed ominously, and the humans exchanged uneasy glances. Steele stepped forward, her face unreadable, while Cooper and Chang stood behind her, bracing for what was to come. The orb pulsed again, projecting an image into the center of the room. The projection showed a sprawling city, a representation of Earth, bustling with life. It was breathtakingly detailed, every street, every face captured with chilling accuracy. To pass this trial, you must sacrifice that which is most precious to your kind. Failure to decide will result in annihilation. The delegates from other species gasped, their feathers, scales, and tendrils twitching nervously. The stakes were higher than ever. What's the catch? Steele muttered under her breath. As if responding to her skepticism, the orb's voice grew louder. The sacrifice must be absolute. No deception, no alternatives. What is most precious to your kind will be lost forever. The weight of the decision. Back in the human's private chamber, the mood was tense. Steele paced the room, her boots clicking against the metallic floor, while Chang analyzed the orb's projection on her datapad. Cooper sat cross-legged on a crate, uncharacteristically quiet, his usual humor absent. This isn't just some philosophical exercise, Chang said, her voice tight. If the orb simulation is accurate, it means we have to choose between Earth's survival and something intangible. Something fundamental to humanity. Steele stopped pacing and turned to face her team. It's testing our values. The thing we hold above all else. Cooper finally spoke, his voice low. So what is it? Freedom? Creativity? Our stubbornness to keep going no matter what? Chang shook her head. No. It's deeper than that. Something universal. Something that defines us as a species. The three fell silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. The other species had faced similar trials and most had failed. For some, the sacrifice had been their offspring, their future generations wiped out. For others, it had been their cultural identity, leaving them as hollow shells of their former selves. Steele's jaw tightened. We're not giving up Earth. We're not giving up our people. That's non-negotiable. So what do we give up? Cooper asked. What's precious enough to satisfy that thing but not destroy who we are? Chang hesitated, then spoke softly. Hope. Steele and Cooper turned to her, startled. What do you mean? Steele asked. Think about it, Chang said. What's the one thing humans cling to no matter how bad things get? We've survived wars, disasters, and extinction-level events because we always believed things could get better. Hope is what drives us, but it's also what makes us vulnerable. If we give that up, we'd survive, Steele finished, her voice heavy. But we wouldn't be the same. The test. The humans returned to the assembly hall, their faces grim but resolute. The other species watched them with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, their own failures still fresh in their minds. The orb hovered in front of the humans, its surface shimmering expectantly. Have you reached a decision? It asked. Steele stepped forward, her voice steady. We have. But we want to understand the consequences. The orb pulsed as if amused by her question. If you sacrifice hope, you will endure. Your species will survive, but you will lose the drive to improve, to aspire. You will exist, but without the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. Steele's expression hardened. And if we don't sacrifice anything? Annihilation. The assembly hall grew deathly quiet, the weight of the ultimatum pressing down on everyone. Steele took a deep breath, her voice firm. We'll survive without hope if we have to. But let me tell you this, we've faced worse. Humans don't just rely on hope. We rely on each other. And that's something you can't take away from us. The orb pulsed again, its surface glowing brightly. Very well. The sacrifice is accepted. Trial completed. The humans felt a strange sensation wash over them, as if a piece of their collective soul had been stripped away. But when Steele looked at her team, she saw the same fire in their eyes. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, but they hadn't lost what truly made them human, their connection to one another. The aftermath. The humans returned to their seats, their expressions unreadable. The other species watched them warily, unsure of what to make of their success. Kreschel approached Steele cautiously, his feathers rippling with curiosity. "What did you give up?" he asked. Steele looked at him, her gaze steady. "Something we thought we couldn't live without. But we'll manage. We always do." Kreschel hesitated, then nodded. For the first time he saw the humans not as chaotic anomalies but as something far more dangerous. Survivors who would do whatever it took to endure. As the assembly prepared for the final trial, the humans stood ready. They had passed every test so far, proving their resilience, adaptability, and determination. Whatever the orb had in store for them next, they would face it head-on. And if the galaxy thought humans were unpredictable before, they hadn't seen anything yet. "You said." The assembly hall felt like a storm ready to break. Tension crackled in the air as the orb reappeared, its swirling surface glowing brighter than ever. The human delegation stood tall, their faces resolute despite the weight of the trials they had endured. Around them, the other species whispered in hushed tones, unsure whether to marvel at the human success or fear what it might mean. The orb's voice resonated, more powerful now, as if this final challenge held an importance beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Trial 4, Legacy. Define your existence. The words sent a ripple of confusion through the assembly. Steele frowned, her mind racing. "What does it mean by define your existence?" Cooper asked, glancing at Chang. Chang's brow furrowed as she analyzed the phrase. "I think it's asking us to justify humanity's place in the universe, to prove why we deserve to continue." Steele nodded, her jaw tightening. "They want us to decide what humanity stands for. What we'll leave behind if this is the end." The orb pulsed, and a shimmering dome surrounded the humans, cutting them off from the rest of the assembly. The vastness of space appeared around them, stars stretching endlessly in all directions. The silence was deafening. A voice, soft but omnipresent, spoke directly to them. "Show me your worth. Define humanity. Humanity's core." The humans found themselves standing on a projection of Earth, a patchwork of its beauty and flaws. Lush forests, sprawling cities, and quiet villages stood alongside scenes of war, poverty, and environmental decay. The duality was undeniable. Humanity was both a creator and a destroyer, capable of great compassion and unimaginable cruelty. The voice pressed again. "You have created much. You have destroyed more. Why should you endure?" Steele stepped forward, her voice steady. "Because that's what we do. We endure. We fall and we rise. Again and again. We're not perfect and we never will be, but we don't stop trying." The orb's voice remained calm. "Words are empty without proof. Show me." The projection shifted, plunging the humans into scenes from Earth's history. They stood among scientists in laboratories, inventing cures for diseases that had once devastated millions. They watched explorers venture into the unknown, from the depths of the ocean to the far reaches of space. They saw moments of unity, like the first steps on the moon, and acts of compassion, like strangers banding together in times of disaster. But they also witnessed the darker side. Wars waged over power, resources squandered, and lives lost to greed and hatred. Chang spoke softly, her voice filled with emotion. "We've made mistakes. Horrible ones. But every time we learn. Every failure pushes us to do better, to be better." Cooper added, "And it's not just about survival. It's about what we create along the way, art, music, stories. We turn chaos into something beautiful. That's what makes us human." The projection shifted again, this time to the faces of humanity, the young and old, the hopeful and weary. It lingered on moments of connection, a mother comforting her child, strangers helping one another after a disaster, friends laughing around a fire. Steele's voice cut through the silence. "We endure because we believe the fight is worth it. Not just for ourselves but for those who come after us. That's our legacy. The judgment." The orb's swirling light dimmed for a moment as if contemplating their words. When it spoke again, its voice carried a tone of finality. "You have proven your resilience, your adaptability, your sacrifice, and now your purpose. Humanity is flawed, but so is existence itself. You embrace the chaos, the imperfections, and still strive for something greater. That is your truth." The projection dissolved, and the humans found themselves back in the assembly hall. The dome around them vanished, and the other species leaned forward, desperate to hear the verdict. The orb addressed the entire assembly, its voice echoing through the chamber. "The test is complete. Of all the species, only humanity has passed. They have demonstrated what others could not. the ability to grow not despite their flaws but because of them. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. The humans stood quietly, their expressions unreadable. Kreschel, the avian delegate who had watched them with a mix of suspicion and fascination, stepped forward. "What does this mean for the rest of us?" The orb's reply was measured. "You have failed to meet the criteria, but failure is not the end. Learn from those who have succeeded. Humanity's legacy is now intertwined with yours. Together you may yet thrive. A new beginning." As the assembly disbanded, the humans were approached by several delegates. Some offered tentative alliances, while others asked questions about humanity's methods and mindset. The galaxy, once dismissive of the chaotic Deathworlders, now looked to them as guides. Steele, Chang, and Cooper walked through the halls of the station, exhaustion finally catching up to them. "You think this changes anything?" Cooper asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. Steele smirked. "Maybe. Maybe not. But we've got their attention now. That's a start." Chang nodded. "And maybe, just maybe, this is how it begins? Working together instead of tearing each other apart?" They stepped into their ship, the weight of the trials still heavy but tempered by the knowledge that they had proven humanity's worth. As the engines roared to life and Earth came into view through the viewport, Steele leaned back in her seat, a rare smile on her face. "Let's go home," she said. In the vastness of space, the humans had been tested and found worthy. They weren't perfect, but they were something far more important: relentless. And that, more than anything, was their legacy. The stars stretched out before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities. Humanity's story was far from over. It was only just beginning.